5 things that confident men never do. Mate, how the hell do I know what a confident man does versus what a nice guy people pleaser does? Because the truth is, mate, I used to be a nice guy people pleaser type who was very passive in his relationships, very passive socially, who was carrying a crap ton of toxic shame, which is the thing that creates the whole nice guy phenomenon in the first place. And I want to share with you a few things from the perspective of what I used to do, right? And how I used to see the world versus how I tend to see the world more now, although I'm obviously not perfect. But if we've never met before, mate, my name is Oliver. And on this YouTube channel, I'm a men's coach, I'm a writer, and I'm a retreat leader. And I help men conquer nice guy syndrome, low confidence, and people-pleasing behaviors to do what? To be a confident, authentic man who is a self-led man leading his own life, living by his own rules, nobody else's. The first thing a confident man never does is change himself in order to fit in. A nice guy is a chameleon. He's a social chameleon. Usually, a nice guy is pretty much an expert at reading the room. He reads the room and he changes his behavior accordingly. Why? So he can fit in, so he can secure the validation and approval from other people that he does not feel for himself. He doesn't feel this for himself because he has internalized toxic shame, which is the childhood-based belief that who he really is, his authentic self, is just not enough. It's not true, but it's a belief, it's a blueprint that he picked up throughout his childhood. But what does a confident man do? A confident man values his own values more than the validation of other people. A confident man does not stay in social situations that don't reflect who he really is. He shows up as he is, and he realizes that if people don't like that, then those are not the people that he wants in his life in the first place. The second thing a confident man never does is punish himself with perfection. You see, a nice guy believes that he needs to be exceptional and flawless just to be acceptable, just to receive the kind of love and acceptance and connection that he sees everybody else having. He believes, because of his internalized toxic shame, that he needs to be perfect. So this means that when he goes into social situations, or when he's at work, or even when he's thinking of running a business and creating a business, he thinks that he has to get everything perfectly right. And if he doesn't get everything perfectly right, this tends to trigger a shame response in him. That shame response is very painful. So over the course of time, as he's gone through this cycle of internalized perfectionistic standards, failing to meet those standards, his inner critic gets very loud, and then he feels ashamed of himself. The more he goes through that cycle, the more he tends to adapt by avoiding social situations, avoiding taking risks, avoiding doing anything really. This is where a nice guy can tend to be very passive in his life. But what does a confident man do? An authentically confident man knows that perfection is a lie. He realizes that it doesn't exist. A confident man does not hold himself to an impossibly perfectionistic standard. A confident man has made peace with his flaws, with his imperfections, with all of his rough edges. He gives himself permission to fail, to look awkward. And this is, in fact, the thing that makes him confident. The third thing a confident man never does is chase external validation. A nice guy only feels good about himself when other people feel good about him, especially women and especially authority figures. A confident man, he values feedback. It's not like he's completely deaf to it. It's not like he thinks he's perfect and he's above everybody or anything like that. But his self-worth comes from within. A confident man feels good about himself when he lives in alignment with his own standards, with his own values, when a confident man values integrity more than validation. And this actually flips the script and means that the people start seeking his validation instead. It's quite weird how that works. The fourth thing a confident man never does is avoid difficult conversations. A nice guy, because of his internalized toxic shame, this belief that he's not enough, he sees conflict, right, or confrontation, or even uncomfortable conversations and raised voices as evidence of his fundamental lack, of his fundamental brokenness, which is not true, but this is just how nice guys tend to perceive it. This means that a nice guy, out of fear of triggering his shame response, because it's very painful, he avoids conflict altogether. He is socially quite passive. He allows people to walk all over him. Again, because he's trying to avoid conflict at all costs, so he will allow people to disrespect him, both in obvious ways or in subtle ways. A nice guy tends to lack boundaries. This can also make him pretty dishonest. It can make him inauthentic with other people. But what does a confident man do? A confident man, he leans into truth. A confident man is willing to step into discomfort. A confident man is willing to have necessary but uncomfortable conversations, because a confident man refuses to sit back and be passive. A confident man takes an active role in shaping his life into what he wants it to be, not what he thinks other people want it to be for him. So he goes first. If something's bothering him, he will address it. If a boundary is being crossed, he will assert it. A confident man doesn't fear conflict. He fears, if we can even put it that way, self-abandonment. He realizes that nothing is worse than turning away from yourself. The fifth thing that a confident man never does is apologize for asking for what he wants. A nice guy, because of his internalized toxic shame, believes that his needs are a burden. His needs don't really matter. If he asks for what he wants, he has to apologize for it. At least that's what he thinks. For one example, in dating, a nice guy in dating is often friend-zoned repeatedly. Very frustrating situation to be in. But the thing is, in most cases, a nice guy is friend-zoning himself. Why? Because he believes that his sexual desires are a bad thing, or a burden to women. So he hides any essence of his sexuality. And the way he shows up is way too friendly, and he puts himself in the friend zone category because she no longer sees him and never really sees him as a sexual option. It's all because he's trying to avoid showing his needs because he thinks they're broken. But what does a confident man do? A confident man realizes that his needs matter. His sexuality is sacred and beautiful. He realizes that his need for respect from other people is fundamental and important for him to be a happy person. And fundamentally, mate, underlying all of it, he knows that he deserves to be happy. And any decision that he makes in his social world, in his life, he doesn't have to apologize for it, because your own happiness is a priority. No, it is the priority. And you should not feel guilty for that. I appreciate you for watching, mate, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay courageous.